Part 1. Stowe, Vermont. Winter of 2001. The winter of 2001 had fully settled over Stowe, Vermont, transforming the small town into a silent scene almost untouched by the world. Snow had been falling for days, covering rooftops, narrow streets, and old wooden fences with a thick white layer, as if time itself had been carefully slowed. The surrounding mountains watched in silence, wrapped in a cold mist that drifted slowly among the pine trees. The streets were nearly empty. Only the distant sound of a church bell and the occasional creak of a door broke the heavy silence of the night. The houses, simple and old in architecture, displayed windows lit by yellowish lamps, creating small refuges of warmth amid the intense cold. Inside, families retreated early, protected from the cutting wind that swept through the town without haste. Local businesses had already closed. The corner bakery, the hardware store, the small market, everything remained quiet, windows fogged by the cold. The town seemed to breathe slowly, as if it were asleep. In Stowe, nights like that were common. Winter had taught its residents to trust silence, to believe that it meant safety. That night, nothing seemed out of place. Nothing seemed urgent. Still, beneath the thick snow and relentless cold, something invisible moved slowly, waiting for the right moment to break that absolute calm. Part 2. Buddy. Among the silent streets of Stowe, there was a presence that belonged to no house, yet knew every one of them. A mixed-breed dog, light-colored fur, marked by cold and time, walked alone through the snow as if he were part of the landscape. His name was Buddy, a simple name, given by someone who is no longer there, but one he seemed to carry with dignity. Buddy had no owner, but he had territory. He knew the scent of closed bakeries, the corners where the wind hit hardest, the places where snow gathered in silence. His steps left uneven marks on the white ground, soon erased by the fine snow that continued to fall. He moved attentively, ears raised, eyes alert, as if he were always waiting for something. The townspeople were already used to his presence. Some saw him as just another stray dog. Others left scraps of food at their doors during the coldest nights. Buddy accepted what came, but never stayed. There was an uneasiness in him, hard to explain, an impulse that kept him moving, even when the cold tightened its grip. That night, however, something felt different. Buddy stopped in the middle of the street, lifted his muzzle, and inhaled the icy air deeply. His muscles tensed, and his eyes turned beyond the village lights, toward the dark fields surrounding Stowe. He couldn't explain why, but he felt it. Something was wrong. And Buddy began to walk. Part 3. The Barking. The first bark echoed through the empty street like a sound out of place. Short, sharp, breaking the silence that Stowe had learned to respect. Buddy remained still for a moment, paws sunk into the snow, body facing the dark fields beyond the village. Then he barked again, and again. It was not a common bark, the kind that begs for food or fights off the cold. There was urgency in it. Lights began to turn on in the houses, one after another. Curtains shifted, windows opened just enough for curious eyes to peer out into the street. Some residents frowned, annoyed. On nights like that, silence was almost an unwritten rule, and Buddy was breaking it. The barking continued, rhythmic, insistent. Buddy paced back and forth, stopped, barked again, as if trying to guide someone invisible. A man opened his front door and shouted for him to be quiet. Another window slammed shut. Irritation hung in the air, mixed with the biting cold. To most, it was just a dog disturbing the town's peace. But Buddy did not stop. His body trembled, not from cold, but from tension. He ran a few yards, looked back, and barked again, louder. The sound crossed the snow-covered streets and vanished into the fields. It was a call, a warning, something that could not wait until morning. Some residents began to complain to one another. They talked about calling animal control, about chasing the dog away. No one noticed that Buddy was not asking for attention for himself. He was trying to lend his voice to something that could not be heard. The wind blew stronger, carrying the barking away from the village, toward an old abandoned farm. Buddy kept barking, moving forward step by step, refusing to give up. On that freezing night, while the town was annoyed by the noise, a dog was fighting against time, and no one yet understood why. Part 4. The Well. The abandoned farm emerged like a shadow at the edge of town, forgotten by time and by winter. Broken fences jutted out of the snow, and the leaning barn creaked softly under the cold wind. Buddy crossed the land without hesitation, leaving hurried tracks on the white ground. His barking now echoed differently, more enclosed, trapped between old walls and bare trees. Inside the farm, the sound repeated itself, insistent, almost desperate. That was when Ethan Miller, a longtime resident of Stowe, decided to investigate. Something about that barking didn't seem normal. He threw on his coat in a hurry, pulled on boots still damp from the previous day's snow, and grabbed his heavy flashlight, one of those old ones built to last. The beam of light cut through the darkness as he moved across the frozen field.
Ethan called out to the dog, but Buddy did not respond. He only barked again, standing beside a circular structure partially covered in snow. The well. Old, forgotten, surrounded by rotting boards. A chill ran through the man that did not come from the cold. He approached slowly, shining the flashlight inside. For a moment, he saw nothing, only deep darkness and the distant echo of his own breathing. Then he heard a faint sound, almost swallowed by the bottom of the well. A cry. Ethan knelt down, aiming the light more carefully. Down below, huddled against the stone wall, was a child. A girl about 7 years old, covered in dirt and shaking from the cold. Her eyes reflected the flashlight beam, frightened, exhausted, but alive. Buddy barked once more, as if confirming what he already knew. In that instant, the town's silence lost its meaning. The barking was not an annoyance. It was a plea for help that had arrived in time.
Part 5. The Rescue. Ethan did not waste time. Kneeling beside the well, he kept the flashlight steady while speaking to the girl, asking her to stay awake. His voice was calm, but inside his heart pounded. The cold that night was unforgiving, and every minute mattered. He stood up, ran a few steps to where the cell signal still worked, and made the call that would change everything. The Stowe Fire Department was alerted immediately. Sirens tore through the silence of the early morning, echoing through the snow-covered streets like an urgent warning. Red trucks moved slowly along the slippery roads, their lights reflecting off the surrounding white. The town, once asleep, was beginning to wake. At the abandoned farm, firefighters set up the rescue with care. Thick ropes were secured, equipment pulled from the trucks, orders exchanged in firm voices. The vapor of their breath rose into the icy air as everyone focused on a single point: the well. Buddy stayed nearby, alert, pacing in short circles as if guarding every movement. One of the firefighters descended slowly, guided by the flashlight beam and the voices above. When he finally reached the girl, he carefully wrapped her in a thermal blanket. She was shaking, but responsive, gripping the sleeve of his uniform tightly, as if she didn't want to be released back into that dark emptiness. The rescue was slow and quiet. Every inch of rope pulled seemed to carry the weight of expectation. Until finally, the girl appeared at the edge of the well. Hands reached out, arms embraced her, and a collective sigh filled the place. She was alive. And Buddy barked one last time, not in warning, but in relief. Part 6. A New Guardian. Snow continued to fall softly when the girl's parents arrived at the site, guided by the truck lights and the unusual activity at the old farm. The desperation etched on their faces gave way to uncontrollable tears the moment they saw her, wrapped in blankets, safe in a firefighter's arms. They ran to her, knelt in the snow, and held her as if trying to reclaim every second of absence. The girl was still trembling, but now it was not only from the cold. It was shock giving way to relief. Her eyes, once frightened, searched the area. That was when she saw Buddy. The dog was there, sitting a few yards away, watching in silence, as if he knew his part was finished. When their eyes met, she reached out her hand, and Buddy approached slowly, allowing the touch. Ethan watched the scene in silence, the flashlight now turned off at his side. There was no heroism in his gesture, only the deep feeling of having done what needed to be done. The firefighters packed up their equipment, and the town, little by little, began to breathe normally again. Before leaving, the girl's mother approached Buddy.
She knelt down, stroked his head, and without saying much, understood. That dog was not just a visitor of the night. He was the reason everything had ended well. Buddy did not return to the streets of Stowe that morning. He left with the family, walking beside the girl, leaving firm paw prints in the snow. The town returned to silence, but something had changed. That night, Stowe gained a story it would never forget, and a family gained more than a happy ending. They gained a guardian.